Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Student of the Game. I am Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game. And listen, if you're here, chances are you like talking about sport, and we're glad you are doing it with us here tonight. Welcome in. An honor, joy, and privilege. The AFC East, the focus tonight. Of course, if you are not watching us on Huddle Up Podcast YouTube channel, on the Sertoba Media YouTube channel, where the struggle is real to be awesome. If you're not checking it out on my Twitter feed at the SOTG, or on the A7BN Sports Facebook page, or on the Student of the Game Facebook page, or on the SOTG Twitch account live, if you are listening to this on a podcast, chances are you're doing it by Spotify or something like that. Any of your favorite podcasters, I'm still no more or less glad either way. And hey, listen, gotta shout out love to the to my writing outlets. Of course, I dropped the piece earlier this week for the Black and Gold Banneret, talking a little UCF football, how well they've developed their depth at some key places as they evolve into taking on action in the Power 5. They're joining the Big 12 as of this year, so check that out on the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! And of course, my latest outlet, the Jaguar Report of Sports Illustrated. I dropped my second piece on how Trevor Lawrence has life just a little bit better this year than last year. So check that out, of course, Jaguar Report. And of course, shouts to my guy, John Shipley, making me a part of that. Bing! And then, of course, the three-point conversion. Listen, I know it's not time for the AFC South yet. That shows in 2 more weeks, but shortly around that on the three-point conversion, you will see my AFC South preview coming up for that. All that going on as well, so definitely had to throw you guys that love here while I'm at it. And hey, reminder, of course, the newest partner on YouTube being Sertoba Media. Shouts to my guy, Drew Willingham, for making that happen here for the second week in a row. Some very beautiful graphics. He even came up with a pretty nice one for the Duval Dive, a Jaguars podcast, which we're going to start dropping here after the preseason games here in the preseason. So look out for that. Bing! That is a product, of course, here that will also be on the Student of the Game podcast feed. And of course, you'll see that on Sertoba Media as well as A7B in Sports, and maybe we'll get it up on Huddle Up. I'll talk to Big Jim about that. I think we got that rolling there too. So look forward to all those normal places that you'd find this podcast. Anyways, enough housekeeping. Let's talk some bleeding football. That's why you guys are here. So the AFC East is a very interesting topic for me. And of course, I got a very distinguished list of guests here that are available, looking to break it all down. Steve Aitchison, Eric Lopez, also of the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! Antwan Staley of the New York Daily News. Looking forward to seeing him for the first time in a long time. Busy dude. He'll be jumping in for a little bit. And of course, Shukri Wrights, another big force in Boston media, not just with the Bruins. We talked some Celtics when he was last time, he even a little bit. But now, of course, the Patriots will be the topic of discussion. A guy I used to work with on the regular at one of my first stops. Nonetheless, he'll be in here tonight. That should be tons of fun. But I have this distinguished group that I'm talking with, and I'm very excited about that. Here's the challenge. This is why I needed a group this strong to do all that. And it's very simple, or at least I say it's very simple. It's simple in my mind in this way. When it's a roller coaster like that, it's, how do I put it? There's a lot of different things you don't know how to account for. People, for example, are talking about one Bill Belichick on the hot seat. I'm not there yet. The dude's a great coach. Andy Reid doing some stuff lately has led to some recency bias swinging in his direction, and rightly so. I suppose that conversation we can have a little bit with Shukri Wrights, but what to make of what they're doing in Foxborough is a unique challenge for me. I'm not a Mac Jones stalwart, so to speak, but I'm not one that's aboard the hate train there too when people be talking about Bailey Zappi, isn't it? Whatever. They got Ezekiel Elliott. That'll be interesting. I'm sure Shukri Wrights will have plenty to say about that and much more. The Jets. I won't set the Jets up ad nauseum here. Listen, you know all the storylines. They got Dalvin Cook. That's fun. They seem to fight a lot at practice. I don't know. We'll get a little bit more of that from Antwan Staley here, as he's the one that'll show up here very shortly around the 8:50 hour here. So that should be interesting to explore. You've heard that, but let's get some of the actual insider stuff. And of course, like I said, Dalvin Cook is the big news there. Let's see how much of a fit he is with the Jets. Moving over to the Buffalo Bills, there's all the question about all the various dramas and this, that, and the other thing. Oh, Stephon, does Stephon still dig Josh? Yeah, I went for the dad joke. I can warn you, it's going to come up again. Did a pre-record with Steve Aitchison, the Bills car guy. Is most famous amongst the fanhood for having a car with Bills decals everywhere. Hey, listen, if it works, that's fine. He also happens to talk really well and intelligently about his Buffalo Bills. And I don't know what to make of them either. You know, there was some talk last week. Somebody be throwing some shade. No offense to Ashley Baker, but you did it. You threw a little shade in the direction of the Buffalo Bills, saying you're not sure they're going to even make the playoffs. We'll get into that last segment of the show. Steve will jump aboard. And then, of course, my guy, you know, I'll put it this way. Eric Lopez has done a lot of work with me and a lot of things, could be even doing even more work with me soon. I was glad to have him aboard to talk something other than UCF football, basketball. He'll talk softball. Hey, the guy's a premier voice over there. But also, at times, Terrell's Cruz followed the Miami Dolphins closely as well. Be interesting seeing what he has to bring up with his Dolphins, where he sits on the whole confusion of the Tua health thing or of all of that. And really, because I mentioned all these question marks. Now, granted, this isn't like the NFC West, where I predict there are some teams that are outright awful. I would make the statement that the AFC East has an argument today on paper to declare itself the second best division in the league. And I say that based on this, right? I have the AFC North at the top, right? Not accounting for injuries and things like that. I know somebody out there is going to come out there and say, but Kyle, isn't it fact that Lamar Demetrius Jackson going to get hurt? Change all that? Listen. This is on paper. I'm not accounting quite for those sorts of things, which also, frankly, raises the stock of the AFC East in and of itself. Looking at you, Dolphins, right? For my mind, like I mentioned, the NFC West, I don't know what to make of them. I can make an argument they're the second worst division in the conference in the NFC. Fine. But the AFC East has just so much mystery, yet right now, today on paper, I have to feel like there's a lot of firepower there. I mean, you're already moving off of Zach Wilson at quarterback with the Jets. That's already a fantastic thing, right? You're going to Aaron Charlet Rodgers, which ad nauseum on this show, we've talked about not only the power vacuum that left, but how much of an embarrassment of riches the AFC has become at the quarterback position. I'm not even one somebody that says Aaron Rodgers is even a top 5 guy anymore. I'm just, that's kind of where I'm at. It's not that he's a bad quarterback. I just think he's going to run and hit the wall with some age issues. And that's just my opinion. Of course, I could be wrong. We'll get more into that when Antwan Staley gets here. Then next on the list here, of course, I mentioned the Patriots. They got Ezekiel Elliott. And the thing I did kind of leave out is they always play stout and staunch defense. I think that divisions generally that have a heavy defensive component to them are the more dangerous ones, bringing me back to the AFC North, right? I mean, listen, that's a division that has Minka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt on the same team in that particular case too. So that's a whole other level of dangerous. But yeah, then here's about the Bills, and like I said, we go over it with Steve. There's just a lot of mysteries there, even over and beyond the drama. Do they have the right pieces in the right places to take things over? But if everything's fine, I'll put it this way: if your biggest question mark in your division is the Buffalo Bills, and you're most concerned that they won't win their division, that tells me your division's pretty darn good. Now, am I prepared to put them ahead of I don't know, like a Patrick LaVon Mahomes the second led AFC West? Yeah, I am. Would I put the AFC West third? No. I would put the NFC East third before I did that. Obviously, Cowboys, Eagles, they're looking really good. Listen, say what you will surrounding my analysis of the NFC East last week. A lot of it was based on the fact that there's going to be a lot of tough matchups within the division itself. I would make an argument for the AFC West at 4. I think that makes sense. But right now, today, AFC West is 4. The AFC South is 5th, which in the past they're usually 6th at best, and there are times they have been the worst team in the division. So, I know members of certain teams such as the Titans or the Jacksonville Jaguars may have questions about whether or not their division is 6th, but I'm sure Titan fans and Colts fans will be inclined to agree with it. And listen, I know some Texan fans that want to try to tell me they have a shot at the division. Well, sure, anything is possible, fine, but they're better too. We'll talk more about that on August 30th when that division comes up. I guarantee you that's going to be a fun time as well. Though it comes down now, the question is, who is the worst division, right? And we're not going to say second worst because nobody really cares if you're the second worst. And of course, I still think today the worst division in the NFL is the AFC South, and I don't think it's close. Now, granted, Derek Carr makes that conversation interesting, right? Here's what it comes down to, though, folks. Your division has the best quarterback currently, and it's either Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins. Not exactly glowing endorsements for your division, right? But then if I start going down the list, you might have a good quarterback in Justin Fields, or I don't know, Baker Mayfield, or I'll put it this way. Any division that's trying to boast its starting quarterback Desmond Ridder is not the fit for me. Not feeling that. And oh, by the way, we're hearing about Baker Mayfield struggling in practice with Tampa and all that, So you're trying to tell me the alternative to that is Kyle Trask. Exciting stuff. Not really. And with that in mind, kind of going down the list there, right? I think Bryce Young has a chance to turn some heads, but, it's not bone-crushing stuff, right? But the next thing, what we're talking about there, too, Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, Jordan Love, and then Jared Goff. We're actually in a place where Jared Goff encourages me more than most of your quarterbacks. And, of course, I'm referring to him compared to the NFC South quarter. Jared Goff is going to break that tie. Isn't that stupid? So, yeah, anyways, that's kind of why I have the NFC South at the low spot in that particular instance. That's kind of, that's where I live with that on the strength of that. And it's not just quarterback play. I feel like the Saints are a good defensive team and they have a quarterback with the most potential in the division. We talked about that a few weeks back for the NFC South preview. I don't see anybody else really in the NFC South that can claim to kind of be able to do both things like that. Or at least the NFC North, there are elements of defensive teams that will give you a hard time, that will play tough, that will out-physical you. I mean, listen, Man Campbell coaches in the AFC North and not in the, NFC North and not the NFC South. Although if he coached in the AFC North, I feel like that would fit too. But, that alone for me, a good tie break, right? I don't know. Anyways, I'm getting a little crazy with that. So the main reason, though, you when you're thinking about why the AFC East should be the second best division, why I have them that well, is just on pure firepower, right? Just look at what's going on there too. I know I'm talking about the New England Patriots, and I said firepower. I get it. Those, when one thinks Mac Jones, they're not typically prompt to think the term firepower, and I get it. That's a tough thing, I'm not here to say that that's a thing. Devontae Parker does not necessarily mean things are going to get turned around. Juju Smith-Schuster arriving or Ty Montgomery is not going to make this offense electric. I get it. Mike Gesicki going from the Finns to the Pats, not going to make it great. Them acquiring Hunter Henry. Actually, no, this is the second thing I got it. I don't think, not groundbreaking stuff here is what I'm saying. It's the rest of the offenses, obviously, that are interesting. Of course, Aaron Charlotte Rodgers is going to be the big factor there with the Jets. It's going to be a whole other situation. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill with Tua, explosive. We've already been over the past couple seasons on why the Bills are explosive. All this explosive offense is why the AFC East is going to be a dominant division. And I think at the end of the day, listen, if everything holds on paper, be prepared to watch a lot of good football out of this division. And I know a guy that's going to be an expert to take us exactly why the East Rutherford division, that's right, the New York Jets, are going to be a big factor in this division like never before. Mostly because I tried to warn you cats about Zach Wilson 2 years ago when he was still at BYU, but that's a whole other question. Let's bring in my guy from the New York Daily News, my old editor from the Dolphins Wire, Antwan Staley. I know I skipped some stops in there between, the Dolphins Wire thing and the New York Daily News, but that's where I know you, so that's why I went. What's up, Twan? Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, man, it's great to see you. We haven't done a show together in a while, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's good to be with you again.
Hey, man, you had the good problem of being busy. I'm not going to front on that, man, but I appreciate your time tonight. So listen, I'm not going to make you rehash the story. I promise there will be no more mentions of illicit drugs or darkness retreats or anything like that. I'm just going to start with this. What happened the past couple days? Dalvin Cook. How big a deal is this, man?
I think it's a big deal. I mean, I think, especially with them having Brees Hall already, he's still trying to get back from, having a torn ACL from last year and have somebody that can take pressure off him. I think it's a big deal. And, a guy, why not have a guy like him that's rushed for over 1,100 yards the last few years and, a former Pro Bowler and things of that nature too. So, yeah, I definitely think this is a big deal for their offense. And this also takes some pressure off of Brees because if you look at the history of running backs coming off ACL injuries, they're not necessarily good in recent memory as well. If you remember Saquon Barkley, I think he took him for another year for him to get back to his full form, and that could be the case for Brees Hall. I don't know, but why not have somebody that's more well established and veteran that could also hold down the fort too, while Brees is still trying to get back to form.
Hey, man, listen, I've been making noise about committees being a good thing at the running back spot since Rudy Johnson was still running for the Bengals in Cincinnati, and I was amazed he stayed healthy as long as he did. Just as an example, I'm throwing it out there, buddy. I had to get a little historian with you. I know you'll get it. But so, and then I got to bring this up, too, because this was a great moment by you. There was another runner, too. I got his name, Michael Carter. I think I'm remembering that. You asked him about handling that turnover there too. Somebody else who has talent that's been trying to stay in and make a difference. And I think this speaks to the depth of that group overall, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know Michael didn't necessarily like when they brought James Robinson in last year and,
Right.
The trade from them and, it had really lessened his production. Although James didn't really do a whole lot with the Jets outside of 1 or 2 games. But, you look at, Michael Carter late in the season, they used him less and less and they relied more on Zonovan Bam Knight, a drafted free agent out of North Carolina. So, yeah, I mean, right now they have 5 running backs in the room. If you add Dalvin in there, and somebody's gonna have to be the odd man out. I don't know who that's gonna be, but it could be. I mean, it could be Michael Carter. Although I'm starting to lean towards like him staying. So it could be a guy like Zonovan Bam Knight who ended up, like I say, undrafted free agent. I don't know if they put him on the practice squad because I think somebody else would, snatch him up if that were to be the case.
Yeah, well, and I mean, again, that's a good problem to have. And let me put an apology to Mr. Carter because me and my good friend Travis Holmes actually predicted last year that James Robinson would be traded. We just didn't know that it was going to be to the Jets and that would be that quickly. So our apologies for predicting that trade. We had no intention of affecting his career. No, but with that in mind, man, let's take it here. Like, I hear so much about this Jets defense, And rightly so. Listen, there's a ton of beef up there. Q getting his cash, that's a great thing. What is it we're not hearing enough about from this defense that people should take heed for?
I think the depth of the defensive line, I think it's their strength. I mean, they have guys that can rotate kind of like hockey, where, you have a guy like, obviously, people talk about Quentin Williams, the leader of the defense, but, I think Jermaine Johnson has had a really good, training camp in preseason. I think Will McDonald has done really, flashed the games, the preseason games that he's been in. Obviously, I think Al Woods is a guy a veteran that can help stop the run as well, up and replace Sheldon Rankins too as well. Carl Lawson, I think it's going to be, provided he's healthy, a lot better than what he was a year coming off a Achilles injury. So they have a lot of depth there at the defensive line room where they're able to shuffle guys in and be fresh at the end of the game. So I definitely think that's the strength of their team. Obviously, you look at the secondary with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I think they're probably the two best tandems as far as cornerbacks in football right now. You got C.J. Mosley, who also the leader of the defense too. So they're really deep. They're really deep on defense right now, and I definitely think they finished fourth last year in total yards and points allowed. They believe they can finish number one this upcoming year, and I think they have an opportunity to do that.
And something that I don't think people know enough with Sauce, but you being another guy at least loosely familiar with the American Athletic Conference, him being from Cincinnati, me having graduated from UCF and you having connections to ECU there, we had an opportunity to see Sauce play across from another guy in Kobe Bryant that got draft stock that may not have been a first night draft pick, but he's used to playing across from another talented corner. Do you think that kind of does anything to kind of spice? I mean, it certainly couldn't hurt anything. I was about to say, does it do anything to spice up Sauce? I know I'm a fat guy, but I don't want that pun. Anyways, but like, do you think there's some element of that aspect too that kind of helped develop him? Am I onto something there? Or is that just a little something extra that's nice to know?
I think DJ is a veteran, so I think having him, been in the league there, whether it be in San Francisco or Seattle, I definitely think it helped his maturation and didn't put as much pressure on him. I mean, you look at rookie corners; they don't typically come out and do what he does. Like I do what he did last year. I think he was one of the best cornerbacks in football. Some people think he's the best right now. I don't know about that, but I do know he's in that conversation. And in order for him to be the best corner in football, he has to do it again. And I think he has the opportunity to do that, especially with the skills that he has, the intangibles, the long range speed, has everything you want in the top flight corner. So there's no reason to think he's going to take a step back this upcoming year.
I mean, listen, let's call it this way. Like it's not hyperbole to say that we're in Darrelle Revis territory with him, right?
I don't want to go that far yet, but he could be. He could be.
Yeah,
he could be. Yeah, but I don't know if I. But then again, Darrelle Revis didn't have a rookie year like he did either. So I mean, it's fair to make the argument, but I definitely think he is. He was the first All-Pro cornerback since Ronnie Lott, so I think that's really says a lot to what he did as far as a testament.
Okay, well, I mean, listen, I'm not going to argue with Ronnie Lott, Schmeck. There you go, buddy. I'm with you.
As far as a rookie, Ronnie Lott was the last rookie corner to make a first team All-Pro team, so that's a good company to be in.
I can't front on that for a minute, man. So, and well, let's take it back to, we talked a bit about the trenches with the D-line. The offensive line's getting its share of criticism. Some of it, I think, is a bit too much as far as the talent that they do have. But the part that concerns me is how much time, the main guys, like you've obviously heard the statements that the five guys that are supposed to be in front of Aaron Charley Rodgers they haven't really gotten that time in the barrel yet. That's the part that gets me worried. Listen, and it's not just, for all the comments I've made on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast about gelling, bing, it's a whole process of figuring out when you got a new guy behind you that does things completely different. And oh, by the way, trying to block a two-time MVP feels to me like extra pressure. It's not pressure like trying to block for Phillip Rivers, who has like a whole gaggle of kids at home or something like that, but it's pressure. Okay. Like what kind of development, what is it that you see from the offensive line so far? Do you feel like that they're showing that they might be a weakness, or are we observing good depth up front by seeing these guys instead of the guys who are going to be the men when we start taking snaps in September.
Well, four-time MVP and Aaron Rodgers, but
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I
sorry, too
think
recently. Thank you. Yeah,
yeah. But yeah, I definitely think. I mean, what part of it is like they have a lot of the guys are hurt right now. I mean, or they haven't. Dwayne Brown hasn't practiced. He's still on the PUP list. They want to bring him along slowly. They hope they can get him back sometime next week, and that'll help maybe stabilize a little bit of the offensive line. Also, Elijah Vera Tucker. He suffered a bit of an injury ankle, I believe, and then now he's waiting to come back too as well. And now you got Lincoln Tomlinson also with a leg injury too as well. So you got three of your offensive linemen who you expect to be in your top five out. Like so he hasn't necessarily been able to play with those guys too. So to build that continuity, to build, what they're trying to build up in, Florham Park in New Jersey. It's hard when you don't have your top flight guys there. And I think they need to, whether it be this week or early next week before the Giants game or that mini bye, I definitely think that they need to find a way to incorporate these guys and make sure that they're all on the same page prior to the season starting.
Because let me tell you why I'm not worried about it. And maybe you've already guessed. You were the guy that hit submit on this article that I wrote for the Dolphins some time ago on the Dolphins Wire saying, hey, guys, you have had 10 games without the top starters and your record was bad. And then all of a sudden, Jay Ajayi pops off because you had the O lineman back for these games, and then they're gone again, right? And then, that there's a whole – Ryan Tannehill got better, leaving a Dolphins line that was patchwork and going to one with the Titans that was just together more often. So this is why I'm preaching that, man. I think it's a similar concept where if they're not all together, and oh, by the way, you don't have a dude that's tantamount to like a Ryan Tannehill that's a former receiver that's running around a lot. Like, listen, I get it that there was a day when Aaron Rodgers would be the leading rusher for his squad, but I don't think he's doing that at 39 years old. Like I have concern on that particular front. Am I overdoing it?
No, I mean, I think even with Tannehill, not having an offensive line or having a makeshift line or whatever you want to call it came back to bite him because he ended up suffering an injury in late in 2016, and then of course, it didn't heal properly, and ended up tearing his ACL the following year during training camp. So not having that line, I think eventually came back to bite him. So you don't want a situation where you have an older quarterback in Aaron Rodgers who'll be 40 in December and the line isn't stable enough. But I don't know, like I say, unless these guys get better as far as the continuity there, which we won't learn until they actually get together. I don't know if it's a move that you can make because that's what everybody keeps saying. Well, one thing can go make a move, but it's nobody necessarily out there that I believe is going to make a huge impact at this point, at this stage of the game. So you just kind of have to roll with the guys you have and hope for the best, basally.
Well, hell, even if you do get a guy, like the continuity problem would still exist.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And well, I'll put it this way: the schedule does you no favors early. But go ahead, you were about to say something. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I mean, it's still gonna be an issue until these guys really play together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. See, somebody else who gets the jelly. It's so great, Twan, when I don't have a guy on the show and I don't have to tap the sign. I don't have to tap the Aaron Evans original painting behind me for referencing my time in the trenches. How do you know so much? Tap, 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 tap. I don't have to do that with you, man. I appreciate that.
I do what I can.
But listen, man, I'm just going to ask it point blank here before we get to the predictions. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is an improvement. Nobody's saying it was a bad pick or anything that dramatic at all. But I think there's a similar issue. We've seen it with Thomas Edward, Patrick Bieber, Brady. We've seen it with Drew Brees. I should probably know Drew Brees' middle name too. Anyways, we'll have that by another episode. I've seen it with Drew Brees. Guys in their career late in there where there is a significant drop-off as the season goes on in their performance. And I'm not going to bring up the hamstring thing in training camp. It happens, fine. Do we see a consistent 17 games from Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I think. I think he was hurt a little bit last year, but he continued to play through it. So I think he'll be fine. I just think that they just have to find a way to protect him. Like I'm not worried about his performance or anything like that. I don't think he's dropped off, if at all. To be quite honest with you, it's just a matter, the rest of the team around him and how good they're going to be. And can they protect them? If they can protect them, I think they have a chance to, win a playoff game, possibly. Contend. You know, you got best case scenario maybe the AFC Championship. Although I'm not necessarily predicting that, but yeah, I definitely think they have a chance to do some good things if they can find a way to protect Aaron Rodgers.
See, a very realistic outlook. That's what we've come to know and expect from Antwan Staley, my man. There you go. I like it because and I'll ask this question. People are talking, the ridiculous Super Bowl stuff and AFC Championship game. Like, if they win that playoff game and do no more, is that going to be a disappointment to the fans?
You say if they don't win a playoff game,
if they do win just the playoff game, but like, let's say they don't get past the divisional round or they don't get to the championship game, like, is that a disappointment?
I mean, they hadn't made the playoffs since 2010, so I don't think that would be a big time disappointment. I'm sure it would be to the players, but not necessarily the fans. I mean, you have to understand it's very hard to do what Tom Brady did the year that he ended up winning his first year at Tampa. So it's hard to win the Super Bowl in general, but especially considering how tough the AFC is. Where I guess I think you got the Bengals and the Chiefs like up at the top, and then you got everybody else just trying to peck at their feet and get where they are, at elite status, and at least in the AFC. So yeah, I don't think it'll be a huge disappointment. I just think yeah, you definitely want to win. You get to the playoffs. I think the Jets can do that, and then after that, then I think we'll see where they stand. But yeah, they got a tough schedule to start out with, and it doesn't do them any favors at the end either because three of their last four games are on the road. So
yeah, a sneaky game for them might be Eric Bieniemy and those Red Tails. Sorry, Commanders. Late on the schedule there too, but I'm not picking them to win or anything silly like that. I'm just saying it's a tough game I see. Anyways,
yeah.
Antwan Staley, give me that record prediction, my guy.
I guess like you put me on the spot. I guess I have them winning 10 or 11 games. I think I could have that. I hadn't necessarily done the math yet, but I think that sounds about right. And have them winning have them being a wild card team in the AFC. So that's kind of where I am.
I'm gonna have you pick 10 games. Because I remember the last time you and I didn't pick them when we were one game apart. A Miami Miracle happened to give you the win over me. I'm still bitter. You remember that? I know. It's okay. No. But yeah, man, no, I think 10 or 11 is about the same thing. I have them splitting in the division. I have them splitting the AFC West. I have them splitting the NFC East. I feel like they might beat the Cowboys. I think that's kind of off or on there. It'll depend on where the offensive line is at. And then the bonus games, the remaining three, they're going 3-0 against the Texans, Browns, and Falcons. I'm pretty confident in that.
I think definitely the Falcons and Texans, yeah. The Browns are sneaky. Like, I don't know how good they could be really good, or they might not be good at all. So I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure out Cleveland, and if Deshaun Watson can get back to form, then I think that says a lot about that team. So yeah, that's the interesting division too as well.
Yeah. I think AFC North is the best division in the league personally, but yeah, I have all my chips on the table that Deshaun Watson can't be the villain. So I think but you're right. The potential is on the table for them to be that sneaky good that you're talking about.
And they're on the road too. So that's a road game late December. So, there is that too.
The man knows how to analyze. The man knows his stuff. Antwan Staley gracing this stage once more on the Student of the Game. An honor and joy and privilege to have you back on, bud. Tell the world where you can be found.
You find me at Antwan Staley. Just really all across the board. Really, it's that simple. Just my name, spelled together.
On all the socials. He's had some other fun stuff on his Twitter handle. We won't talk about that. That being said, I do have another guy who's a hockey guy on the show, Shukri Wrights, that writes for the Boston Bruins. So I do have that other hockey part of the world loosely represented here on the pod. I just want to let you know that, Twan Staley.
Well, that's good to know too. I love hockey, so.
My man, Twan Staley, dude, great to talk with you. Thanks for the time. Looking forward to the next one, brother.
Yeah, next time, man. Anytime you need, man.
Likewise, the New York Daily News, Antwan Staley. Always great to hear from him. Hey, listen, follow him on Twitter while you're at it. Do yourself a favor. He's absolutely awesome. But here's a guy who another guy at least loosely tied down the line to Sports Talk Florida. No, I didn't mean for this to be a theme. That's just kind of what happened. But you'll see me do a lot of work with him on the regular with the Black and Gold Banneret. Bing! But hey, I want to talk some NFL with him. We're buddies like that. The man that people call Drew Glukov, sorry, the man that people call ELO, Eric Lopez. What's going on, buddy?
I am doing well. Is this like a birthday roast for you here? Like, it's your big day here.
You listen, football called, my show's on Wednesday. Everything else fell into place, man.
All right. I like the Sports Talk Florida reference. That's taking it back a day, but it's good to be on. Good to be on.
Yeah. Hey, listen, if I got Brandon Howard on the show, it'd be a real party up in this beast. But that's a whole other question. I'm looking to get him on talking running backs and that economics once we figure out what's going on with Josh Jacobs eventually. But enough about that and the promotion of future topics. Well done by you, Eric Lopez. Let's go ahead and get to it, man, because I'm just going to go point blank here. We could talk about Christian Wilkins, holding out. I think they'll work that out. I'm not worried about that. Christian Wilkins is excellent defensive tackle. I got no beef with him trying to get his. I think he's really good at his job, and he's fun to watch too in some of the between the play stuff. But man, listen, what's miring over this team with the health. What's different this year? What will keep Tua standing up?
Apparently a new helmet, and apparently, as he said, taking jiu-jitsu. So I don't know. It's a couple of different first. No, look, that's the number one question, right? Like a lot of people, a lot of experts like this roster. This team, I think, knows them. Yeah, I mean the talent's there. We will get into some of the parts of it perhaps during this, but it doesn't matter if he can't play. And I don't even think it's important that he plays a full season. It's like he plays the majority of the season. And that's the big question. And I'll be honest with you, I've been baffled at how the Dolphins have handled the quarterback position from a depth chart standpoint. Obviously, Mike McDaniel is the biggest Tua fan. I think that's clear. But I'm surprised that with a guy who, could be one hit away from his career being over, right? Like, I mean, he's had multiple concussions. It's a legitimate question. And their answer was, hey, let's bring in Mike White to be the backup quarterback who I don't know. I thought they would have upgraded more in the backup, whether it be maybe a signing somebody else, or free agency, or maybe a draft pick in the quarterback, because you're right. For all this optimism about the Dolphins and certainly what they're capable of, this is the biggest boom or bust team this year. You could tell me this team wins 10, 11 games, makes a big push in the playoffs. I believe it. You could also tell me they go 6-11, and I would believe it. Kyle, I think they're the wild card, not only the AFC East, but I would argue the entire AFC, because the ceiling, it's really a yo-yo, and it depends on, like you said, on Tua's health.
Yeah, the tail wags on that, no question. I mean, granted, I said that the NFC West is the biggest tail to wag in the league right now for predictions, at least for me. But to your point, the fact that it hinges so much on one player, is to me, what's his word? I mean, that makes it the big tail wag that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, because I mean, if he's not healthy, I'm not a believer in Mike White. I know Mike White had his moments with the Jets, and I understand you have a salary cap. You can't just get anybody. But the Dolphins kind of treated it like, oh, he's fine. He's good. Let's hope he's right. Now, because this offense will not function, I don't believe. I have questions. I know it's the first preseason game. Let's not read in too much into it. But they look lost when Tua's not there. That's been proven. But we'll see. And look, I have questions about the running game, Kyle. They didn't get Dalvin Cook. I understand the Jets. You just had Antwan Staley talked about Dalvin, $8.6 million. I get it. I think the Dolphins needed Dalvin Cook. One thing that could keep Tua healthy is a running game consistently, and I'm just not sold on your two 49ers cast-offs in Mostert and Jeff Wilson is the answer.
No, and I think I don't know why they're still participating in the Myles Gaskin sweepstakes either for that too. That's a whole other question. But no, and I get. I'll put it this way: I get the reason for the concern in that backfield. The offensive line, such that it is. I'm still kind of baffled. Like last year, I felt like they were the best group in the division, and yet all the injuries happened that did. Not only did you have Tua and his issues, but then Bridgewater went out in the same game that Tua got hurt. The whole thing was strange to me how that all transpired with the offensive line. They're not bad like they used to be when I was writing for Antwan Staley in the Dolphins Wire, but they're not what they were last year. I feel like they're doing a lot of, they're obviously doubling down on Waddle and Tyreek Hill, rightly so. I would have enjoyed seeing Dalvin Cook in a Dolphin uniform. I don't know that they need it per se, but it would have been a nice piece to have. And I think the most important piece that people aren't accounting for really in the Dalvin Cook sweepstakes is his ability to run block. I think that's something that the Jets were big winners on in particular because, as we talked about just a bit ago with Antwan Staley, that he's able to add that extra protective layer, if you will, if something falters in front of him, something that Ezekiel Elliott can do but doesn't do quite as well, in my opinion. I think, though, they were going to be relying on their defense to kind of stop people and then, get the score up so big that they can just hand it to an average Joe running back to finish out the game. Maybe. I don't know. But
that's the big thing. Right. That's the big thing is obviously the addition of Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, defensive change. You mentioned Christian Wilkins. You're saying that they'll work that out. I think they'll work that out. But something that's interesting here, depending on this alignment with the Vic Fangio, he might be more moved from defensive tackle to quote a defensive end. Now, why is that a big deal? As you know this, Kyle, from an NFL standpoint, if let's say this gets to a point where they have to franchise him, if he's listed as a defensive end, defensive ends make more money than defensive tackles.
Correct.
So that does have an effect perhaps on these negotiations, and we'll see where it goes. But to your point, I do think this Dolphin defense is better. I mean, Vic Fangio is a great defensive coordinator. Now they did lose Jalen Ramsey because it wouldn't be a Dolphins without injuries. We're ready to go to the season. That's very unfortunate because I think he would have fit in nicely in this defense. They hope to have him back in December. We'll see. But I think the Dolphins, you're right. You nailed it. Dolphins are hoping that this defense can win them some games and take some of the pressure off the offense. Not that the defense was atrocious last year, but they weren't going to win games. Yes, they would make some plays here and there, but at the end of the day, you just didn't trust them, to make a big play at the end against good teams like the Buffaloes of the world. So they're hoping this defense can dominate, kind of like the Rams a couple years ago. Denver's teams. Bradley Chubb. I know you've been critical of that move a year ago when the Dolphins got him. Well, Bradley Chubb shined under Vic Fangio. We'll see if that happens again.
I was critical of Chubb?
The move by the Dolphins to get Chubb.
Oh, yes. I forget what I said now. Did I say they paid too much for him or something?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That might be. And yeah, but that being said, the dividends would come now. I would totally grant you that. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I'll put it this way. I might have been a little blinded by the fact that, the Jags basically got Calvin Ridley for free. So maybe, any other deal is bad after that when you really think about it. I'm kidding.
It's valid.
Yeah. No, and listen, if he pans, I'm more than happy to say I overthought it. Yeah, at the time of the trigger pulling, I may have thought it was a bit much. But yeah, I at the time, I feel like it was a more line backing that they may not have needed as much. They did try to address the corners. I'll grant them that. But then Jalen Ramsey got hurt. But to be honest, Elo, tell me if you think I'm crazy here, but I can make an argument that that's really just not that big a blow for me. What do you think?
Well, the amazing thing is they signed Eli Apple, who's experienced corner, to help there. And here's the thing. You're right. Here, the corners will be helped by the pass rush, right? That was the thing that struggled with the Dolphins. They couldn't get a pass rush consistently. With Vic Fangio, they're going to mix up the defenses. They're going to give them different looks. They're going to come out with all blitzes. They may not come out with an all blitz, but they're going to try to get you with the pressure with their four guys, right? Like Chubb and Wilkins and Phillips and even Seiler. That's the difference, I think, that they're looking. They're trying to be aggressive. I think the criticism on the Dolphin defense last year under Coach Boyer, and even to some extent under Brian Flores when he was the head coach, although not as much with him, was more so with Boyer, was they were very predictable defense. You knew what you were getting every down from a scheme standpoint. As far as if you're the offense and you're looking at the defense, okay, you know what the Dolphins are going to line up with. It's just about, okay, let's execute against that specific defense. As you know, Vic Fangio likes to do a lot of mixed different things, mix it up, and that's why he's been successful in his career. And I think the Dolphins are counting on that to take that next step defensively for the Dolphins, and that could be the key to them and their success from that standpoint. Obviously, to his health aside, the Jets have a good defense. The Patriots have a good defense. I think Buffalo, when it's healthy, which has not been often defensively, they're pretty good defensively. People forget they had injuries to Von Miller. They had injuries to their secondary. That's what I think kind of hurt Buffalo there at the end. The Dolphins have to match that defensively, and I think they hope they do that. Sure.
Well, and I've heard that criticism of the Dolphins being predictable on defense, such as they were. But I mean, you mentioned the injuries earlier. Being in a place where you're relying on an advanced aged Canadian player as your top guy, which, no disrespect to Cameron Wake, him being a star is just unconventional. That's all I'm saying. And then losing Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I know why he left, and I don't beef that he left, and God bless him for him having the success in a defense, actually using him the way he should have been used. But even when he was just a conventional safety, he was rivaling Derwin James across the nation there with the Chargers. I made an argument that Minkah Fitzpatrick was a more versatile player, and I was proven right by that with the Steelers, but one could argue that Derwin James is still a better overall safety because he does coverage better. I don't know. But when you're losing players of that caliber, and then you can't even keep the guys that are supposed to be a big deal on the field anyway, you're going to come out with predictable stuff. I don't think that falls on the coaches. Now, when Christian Wilkins starts to develop, even Ray Lewis will tell you that a defensive tackle is the essential element to make any defense work right, because that's how you get either pressure or guaranteed run stopping. Please ask Sam Adams or Haloti Ngata, which, by the way, Hall of Fame finalist Haloti Ngata, I should say. I hope he gets in there sooner than later. Call it fat man bias if you want, Eric Lopez. But I think I will back you on saying that Vic Fangio coming in, the personnel that they have, is really good. And I know it's fun to talk trash on Eli Apple. I don't think he's necessarily there to see the field on a regular basis per se. Maybe be in there for some dime nickel packages, what have you, if that. They have a pretty, deep core. I think he's just there to help install some of these complicated.
I agree with you there, but the thing that was, when you lose a Jalen Ramsey, literally in your first practice, it's hard to just replace that. So to find a guy that has experience of an Eli Apple, who's not going to set the world on fire, but he has experience, he's played, he's made plays, to bring him in there, all things considered, that's not too bad there. And I think when you look at the Dolphins, Holland at safety, I think he's going to take another level. I think he'll flourish in the Fangio defense from a safety position. The big question, I think, is the linebacking. How many years? I feel as a Dolphin fan, Kyle, every year I feel like, the linebacking core for Miami. It's ironic. Zach Thomas just got inducted to the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame.
If you didn't say it, I would have made that point, buddy. I'm just saying.
You look at the linebackers for the Dolphins. They picked up David Long from the Titans. David Long's been healthy, he's been good. He's been productive. He's athletic, right? He kind of fits what Vic Fangio's looking for. He's a guy that can cover as a linebacker, but he can also rush. But can he stay on the field? That's going to be key, I think, in that linebacking core to go along with Baker and company. And then Chubb, as you mentioned, I think that's an interesting question on that defensive side of the ball for Miami. Because I like the front. I like the front. This defense could get – I think I would be perplexed if they can't get a pass rush with 4 guys.
Yeah, and that's – listen, for any defense, that's a good stable to start the show with, so to speak, right? That's a good opportunity. Because if you could do anything else after that, then you're going to be a hell of a defense. Please ask the Giants that beat the Patriots twice. That's exactly how they did it. I think it's funny that you mentioned the point about the linebacking. They are they are relatively mediocre and have been for some time. There have been some guys that have jumped off. I remember covering Baker as a dude who was a standout, but he wasn't great. At one point, Taco Charlton was a member of this group, and he was getting sacks. How about that silliness?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just not the same group have you seen where you had the luxury of Zach Thomas or even Jason Taylor basically, I don't want to say inventing the jack position, but certainly making it famous defensively, where guys were starting to be listed as edge rather than linebacker or defensive end, right? I mean, he was famous for more than just being an underwear model, Elo. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, I understand.
With that in mind, your Miami Dolphins, and listen, I stalled myself. I looked up and saw it was showtime and hit the button right away. That's how long I was mulling over this, and a lot of it was the Fins' schedule because of the reasons you mentioned. But let's put the rubber to the road, man. Where do you have the Dolphins at this year?
It's tough because it's a tough schedule. You got the AFC East, NFC East going head-to-head this year. You look at the Dolphins' schedule. Look at the way they start the season. At the Chargers, I know it's going to be a Dolphin home game because there's no Charger fans that but nonetheless, they open at the Chargers, which that's going to be tough. Then at New England, Sunday Night Football at Foxborough. Then you host Denver. Sean Payton, they can't be any worse than they were last year. Then at Buffalo, I think if the Dolphins could get off to a 2-2 in that 4-game slate there, Kyle, then I think they'll be all right and go maybe 9-8, 10-7. But again, how many games is Tua going to play, Kyle? Right. We can make these predictions. We can try to forecast it and be bold. I can't be bold because I don't know how many games he's going to play. The more games he plays, I think the Dolphins, it's been proven. When he's on the field, the Dolphins win and are successful. When he's not playing and you're going to your backup, you're going to struggle. And with this schedule and this division, that injury could be the difference between an 11-win playoff season to a 5-6-win season. And there's a lot of, it's a stressful time for the Dolphins. They have not won a playoff game, as you know, since 2001. They haven't won. I mean, I'm not even going to bring up the Super Bowl factor and all that. I'm just worried about playoff win. And I think it's a good team. I think everybody agrees, even the offensive line. I know you're questioning the offensive line, but if Armstead's healthy, they were good. You said you thought he was the unsung hero last year.
Absolutely.
Armstead.
Yeah. To be clear, I've been critical of the offensive line in the past. I'm not here to say they're bad. I think they're the best in the division. I do still think they need work. And I think an offensive line needing work is kind of a commonality in the division overall.
What spot you're concerned more about in the line there? I mean, obviously left guard is open right now. You got Eichenberg, you got possibly Isaiah Wynn. You got Smith. Is that the position you're looking at? I mean, Robert Guard, it looks like Hunt's going to be the starter there. What are you looking at?
I mean, for me, if you get good center play, you could kind of balance out the guards. It's the other tackle that needs to do his job in my mind. So, and that's just speaking from a textbook standpoint. I'm not at Dolphins camp watching these guys take snaps every day per se. I've been just as critical of the Jags line for a while, and they've been impressing me. You can see some of what I wrote about it in the Jaguars Report article I dropped this past Saturday after the preseason game. Bing! But with all that in mind, Eric Lopez, I'm with you on the 9-win mark. That's what I have.
9-8, right?
Yeah, I have them splitting their division. I have them going 1-3 against the West. Somehow I think the Broncos beat them. To your point, you bring them up. I think they get better enough to make that a game. That might be, it's less for the injury, Elo, and you're enough of a Dolphins fan to realize that sometimes Dolphins be Dolphining,
I can't disagree.
I mean, hey, listen, for the AFC West, I had a Charger in element into that too, and Booga Peters was completely cool with it in that episode himself.
Well, and I'm going to tell you too, Mike McDaniel didn't have a great playoff game from as far as clock management with Skylar Thompson. And there's some Dolphin fans that are wondering. There's a lot of pressure down there with the Heat had to run to the finals, the Panthers to a Stanley Cup final, the Marlins are having a good season, and everybody's like, what about the Dolphins? What are they going to do? When are they going to take the next step? It's we're not getting younger, Kyle. I mean, evidenced by, happy birthday.
You tied in so many things. First of all, apologies to Shukri Wrights, who's listening in the digital green room. You bringing up all this Miami success when he's following Boston groups the way he is. And then on top of this, this is what I'll say, though. You bring up the playoff success points. My retort is that was his first head coaching effort as a playoff contender. Okay. For him, first of all, for him to do what he did this past season, phenomenal. This guy's going to get extended. If he doesn't, somebody will snatch him up. It won't be a problem. I'm not saying it's not Jim Harbaugh inevitable, but it's inevitable. But the punchline being this, my friend, I think he's the kind of guy that has taken all those experiences with him. You're stuck in a game with Skylar Thompson.
It was there. Could have been their first play. It was there to be had, but yeah,
the fact it was that close should say more than that.
No, it was a really great effort, and it gives you optimism this year. But again, if you have healthy quarterbacks, you probably win that game going away. And you mentioned Mike McDaniel and his success. He's only as smart as his quarterback. Can he keep him healthy? Unless you believe Mike McDaniel is Kyle Shanahan, the junior, who can turn any quarterback to being productive.
I think it's the receiver core that does that. And also, see, Mike McDaniel has this problem. If you put an S on the end of his name, he becomes a bad coach like Josh McDaniels. So that's another thing you need to watch for. Make sure you spell his name correctly.
Great line. How long have you been holding that one?
I've actually been using it a lot. You just happen to be present to set me up. Anyways, Eric Lopez, man, what a segment. I appreciate you coming aboard. Tell the people where you can be found, my guy.
Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter, X, whatever you would like to call it. I will be bantering with Kyle throughout the year on blackandgoldbanneret.com with UCF football. And actually, Real Loudest Day, we're going to be covering a pretty big college football game Labor Day weekend. We're going to be at the same spot.
Say that. That's right. Yeah.
Top 10 showdown, Florida State, LSU. So we're going to be hanging out talking football like this without the cameras. But, hopefully the press box will.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'll be there for the 3-point conversion. You'll be repping. It'll be a great time, Eric Lopez.
Football's here. It's a great time. Football is back, finally.
I love hearing a softball guy tell me it's great that football is back. That's my life right there. Like, hey, listen, FSU is going to be a fun game at the Citrus Bowl kickoff, and I'm glad you brought it up, Eric Lopez. We will be there. So, listen, man, until our next opportunity to banter on the Black and Gold Banneret, I'll see you then, brother. All right?
Always a pleasure talking to you, sir, and enjoy the rest of your birthday.
Appreciate you, brother. Eric Lopez coming in, his first time on this show. The schedules have not worked out until now. Maybe it's because we see each other all during the week in college too. There's that. But listen, here's a guy. I worked with him a while back, the first time to start with. He came on during the season to talk hockey and NBA and absolutely just drilled it. I've loved watching this old man. I say old man, this young man grow and become a better just personality, not just writer of sport, and to be the entity he is now. I am excited to once again bring on my guy. Gonna be talking a little Patriots with him tonight. Shukri Wrights. What's going on, my man?
Well, thank you for the intro. Well, happy birthday. I didn't realize today was your birthday. And I mean, you're just 5 months shy of 316. Instead, it's 816. So, but all in all, it's all good, man. I hope your birthday has gone very well. I actually enjoyed listening to you talk to Eric Lopez just a few moments ago. I thought that conversation was very much entertaining and enlightening.
Hey, man, listen, I used to listen to him in my car on the way to work before I got into doing stuff here in local Orlando radio. And he was one of the first guys I met when I got into the press box in 2017 with the UCF Knights, man. So he's really done a lot to help me out, and obviously a great experience, man. Listen, I don't know where UCF sports would hit your spotlight or your radar there, but if you listen to the Black and Gold Banneret, he and I banter there too. That'll be fun all the way. By the way, there's a professional right there giving me an opportunity to drop on one of my other pods. Bing! Thank you, Shukri Wrights.
My pleasure.
Hey, listen, I believe in what you do. Anyways,
stop it.
I did the know your rights pun last time. I needed something different, man.
Something new and original. That's something understandable.
Man, speaking of new and original, I think that's what I think that's what Patriot fans are hoping to get out of Bill Belichick and the Patriots this year. I'll start with new and original on this. Ezekiel Elliott arriving at camp. What's the feeling, man?
Well, there are people that are like, why the hell Ezekiel Elliott? And personally, I'm like, well, I mentioned this last week on my radio show in which that they need to get a running back. It was abundantly freaking clear after watching the first preseason game against. My mind is not about to blank on me, but in week one, of the preseason game at Gillette, in which the Patriots, I thought they had themselves an interesting battle in which number one, the offensive line in itself, I have question marks on
Right.
both up front and as well as the depth of it. There are people on Twitter, and of course, Twitter being the absolute cesspool that it is, and my low tolerance for morons out there in the Twitterverse. So, well, it was just the first preseason game. What did you expect? I'm like, buddy, I'm not reacting as if this is week 7. I'm sure you watched the game. I watched the game as well. The O line is in shambles right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not going to enter week 2 of the preseason with the understanding that if this O line does not get resolved, you are absolutely screwed. And I'm going to do my best not to curse in this podcast.
I appreciate your candor.
And I cannot express enough why my faith in Bill Belichick itself is low.
Mm-hmm.
I should be more celebrating the fact that they got Ezekiel Elliott, but I'm not. I like the signing, but this signing came after the fact that the check engine light just came on and said, oh my God, we needed another running back. Well, no bleep. Where have you been all off season? You thought after losing Damian Harris that you wouldn't need another guy. You thought that going into another year of giving Ramondre Stevenson the same workload he had last year was going to work. I have a farm to sell you in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. What part, like that aspect for me genuinely blows my mind. So when the Patriots went out and they signed Ezekiel Elliott, I'm like, okay. This is on the heels of having not signed a number 1 receiver, having missed out on DeAndre Hopkins, who by the way went to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And now you're bringing a running back whom by and large part people were saying, well, he's washed up. He's not the guy he once was. Let me remind everybody that he was tied for 5th in the NFL in rushing touchdowns just last season with 12. So he's not completely done. But this move is more of like, well, we need some sort of splash. We need some sort of buzz because there is no buzz around the New England Patriots right now, if we're being real. So, frankly, you want an honest Shukri tonight? I'm going to give you a brutally honest Shukri. Like, I am going to give it to you raw and honest without me cursing because I'm really in that kind of mood. But frankly, the Patriots, I got question marks galore. I'm here to talk about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So if you're looking for me to have my pom-poms on, sorry, I'm not the guy. Never was the guy. I want to give it to you straight. So, Kyle, what's going on? Talk to me.
Hey, man, so the best host, well, you having pom-poms in my mind would be on a Halloween costume. If that was it, I wouldn't be calling you Shukri Wrights. I'd be calling you Shukri something else. No, but listen, buddy, I'll say this, and too, I am not caping up for this offensive line. Let me be clear. But I think an element of that, too, is the Texans defense improving such that it has, and especially with young players. Their defensive front, listen, the moves they made in that draft didn't just include CJ Stroud, you know this, and the work they've done, not just in the past 2 seasons, but in this draft as well to bring in appropriate corners. They have a more complete defense than they had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you come out with guys that ain't all that, they're going to look they're going to be the ugly girl at the club, and all the girls now look prettier, right? The 5s now look like 7s if you bring in a 3.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. And
I
I
know
think
exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you're the younger guy. You know what I'm talking about there.
Oh, yeah.
But do you think an element of that existed in that preseason game? Not that it completely negates your point, but I think we have to account for that, right?
No, it does. And thank you for recalibrating my brain a little bit as I was blanking on who the Patriots played in week 1, and I should know this. But when they played the Houston Texans, I came away looking at the Texans on 2 fronts. Number one, I really like what I saw from CJ Stroud. I know it's a small sample size, it's preseason. I get all that. But I like what I saw in terms of his ability to read the defense, his ability to make the throws when he needs to make the throws, situational football. You know, from going back to the Indian days that I'm huge in situational football, and it applies, it's amplified by 1,000 now, 10 years later. Like I thought that CJ Stroud did a solid job overall in terms of taking care of the football. But man, if there's one thing that really does stand out to me is the secondary for the Texans. I don't think it's getting enough love in that AFC South. I think this secondary for the Texans has a chance to surprise a lot of people this season. And CJ Stroud, listen, it's early on. It's one game. I'm not going to go jumping up and down saying that, well, he should be the starter in week one. I mean, something that the Indianapolis coach already decided they were going to name Anthony Richardson as their starter, which is truly shocking if you ask me. But that's neither here or there.
You thought they were going to go with Uncle Rico?
I thought they were better off at least starting out. Starting out, yes.
All right.
But that's neither here or there.
Okay.
But keeping the train on the track.
Right.
As far as the Patriots side of things are concerned, I was pretty aggravated they didn't start Mac Jones. Here are my reasons why. Do not give me the BS of, well, who's playing their starters in week one? Did you not watch any of the preseason games? Mahomes started, right? He played one series or something like that, right? Derek Carr, he played a little bit, but there were like maybe 5 or 7 notable starters that you knew.
I saw Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence started at least one series, and I'm like, why isn't Mac Jones getting the reps? He should be getting live in-game reps with a new offense, with his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. Why the hell is he not playing?
And this one actually being an offensive coordinator while we're on that topic.
Thank you. And under a real offensive coordinator, like not some supermarket, Walmart, Paul Blart offensive coordinator we had last year in Matt Patricia. No. So the thing that aggravated me in terms of that Mac Jones not playing is, what benefit did we really get outside of the fact that we got to see Malik Cunningham play? Who, by the way, I genuinely believe that there's something there with this kid, and I'm not calling him a kid as a derogatory term at all. But with this young man, there's something there. There's something there. I don't know what. I mean, yes, he's a hybrid player. He's a quarterback. He's a receiver and so forth. I mean, hell, you can put him in the backfield and on certain plays. But man, outside of that, what benefit was it that Mac Jones didn't play on against the Texans? I saw that there was zero benefit at all. I'm sure he's going to play a little bit against the Packers in week 2 on this Saturday night. But come on, man. I'm just aggravated.
Well, and we mentioned the accelerated players that would be on there too. Maybe he was worried about Mac Jones. And by the way, I'm going to say this. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit on this with Malik Cunningham. Listen, I'm on record on this podcast and on the Black and Gold Banneret because UCF played him twice in the past 2 years as they played Louisville. Malik Cunningham, if he can develop a real, I don't say an arm, I feel like he can throw the ball.
No, he can throw. No, he can.
But if he can develop real accuracy, he's going to be dangerous. And in this NFL, Shukri Wrights, if you're an athletic guy that can make plays and buy yourself time, not just in the pocket, but in your career, not having to rely only on your arm so you can develop the arm in question, you have a recipe to be a really solid looking quarterback.
Absolutely.
You see Jalen Hurts, for example, I think is one, in that particular case. And hey, depending on what the offensive coordinator does with the Ravens, maybe Lamar Demetrius Jackson will be the next guy to make that concept by having the opportunity to show his arm off after developing it to an NFL capacity at that point. But I mean, I'll put it this way. You aren't impressed by the weapons per se with the Patriots, and they're still trying to figure out the quarterback, and the offensive line isn't where you are and you kind of like the Zeke signing. Let's try to spin a little bit more positive. I mean, the Patriots defense shows some promise, right?
I could sit here and rave about the defense. The defense I'm not worried about, which is what a lot of my comments about the Patriots so far this training camp / preseason has been about the offensive side of football.
Sure.
Defensively, I'm truly not worried about it all. If I want to start raving about the defense, I'm going to first start by talking about Keon White. I didn't realize how much of a manimal this dude is. I've heard about him when he was at Georgia Tech. And me personally, loving college football, and I know in the past we've talked about college football on NGN and whatnot.
Sure.
But, man, I didn't know how good this dude is until seeing him play on certain parts of the game on like in week 1 against the Texans of preseason. I'm like, ooh. I think you put him with Bill Belichick? How many guys have we seen throughout Bill Belichick's tenure that he's drafted on the defensive side of football and he's developed and he's cultivated and they've turned into absolute monsters on the field, especially in that front seven? Too many in the name, especially in the secondary, of course, that included.
Rob Ninkovich is a guy who does not make most NFL squads that Belichick turned into just a special player.
Exactly.
I think that's a tribute to his coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm watching, I'm like, this defense, Keon White, okay. Christian Gonzalez, he's a rookie. I expect him to make mistakes, but there's no question, there's no doubt as to why he was drafted in the first round, and rightfully so. I'm like, no, that dude is a first round talent coming out of Oregon. But man, defensively, I think that the part that excites me the most is the front seven. I really do think Christian Barmore can stay healthy and stay on the field. You got him with Keon White, and as well as another year of Matthew Judon in this system, with him being the pass rusher that he really is. You may have one of the best pass rushes, I think, in the AFC, if not in the NFL. But the only part of that that's worried about the defense on side of the ball is the youth and the inexperience of the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as we could sit here and we could talk about like some of the guys on the Patriots secondary in which that they have some experience, but they are relatively young. And I do think that there is something to be said. And I'm curious to see how Kyle Duggar develops furthermore, especially this season in the secondary. But I'm excited to see just how good this Patriots defense can be. But on the flip side, I am worried about this offense greatly because they still don't have a number one receiver, and the offensive line, they're not healthy right now. And I wonder about the depth. And I'm sorry, and I'm running around in circles here. Back to the negativity side of the coin, but I talked about this earlier today on the day of this recording on an NPR station here in Boston, that the offensive line depth worries me. And you having an affinity for offensive line entrenchment, you understand the value and the importance of having an offensive line.
Well, and I could say, I've been critical, obviously not of you, Shukri Wrights, but of Boston fans in general about how they overhype things in a particular direction. There's not a lot of middle ground in that market there, Shukri. I think
you're right. There isn't.
But I think the one place where the Boston fans are right to be perturbed, worried even, if you will, about the offensive line is because they've seen what a great one looks like. Find me another offensive line that's been featured on a damn credit card commercial. It ain't a thing.
Yeah.
So those guys
20 years.
Right?
Matt Light, Joe Andruzzi. I mean, I can go on and on. Yeah.
And some of them were actually switched out. Logan Mankins was in there.
Logan Mankins, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, by the way, don't tell me you wouldn't pay money to see Logan Mankins and Terrell Suggs in a cage fight, bro. I'm just saying.
I would. Seriously.
But seeing that group and then trying to compare it to that, that tail wags pretty wide, man. And that's the reason why you and the Boston faithful there around Foxborough are worried about that front. And listen, I don't have to tap the sign with you either. You get it. I kind of lament it. Listen, critical as I am of Boston fans, as much as I've had to live with me continuing to stand by the statement that I personally don't think Thomas Edward Patrick Bieber Brady is the GOAT. Different episode, Shukri. We'll talk about it another time if you'd like. But it would take too long. That's why I'm saying it. I really would like to chop it up with you.
Made that look for a reason. That's
it's a note. I'm constructing the tweet already, Cal. But no, listen, with all of that, I could definitely support here why there's concern. And I don't have to have a sign to see it. I'll leave it at that, man. Listen, the way you put it, we've gone round the circle of emotion here regarding the New England Patriots, such as they are. Shukri Wrights, it's crunch time. Can you give me a record prediction for your Patriots?
I really see them being 7-10.
7, okay.
Because, and some people will say you're just too negative. You don't believe in your team, play. Actually, I do. But here's the problem: I live in reality. A lot of you live in Fantasyland, and I want to put this very bluntly on record. It's not impossible, nor improbable, that the Patriots lose the first 4 games of the season.
Right.
Let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, of who the Patriots have in the first 4 games, as I like to call Murderers Row. Eagles, week 1. Jalen Hurts and an angry Eagles team is coming to Foxborough. And by the way, speaking of the Eagles, just real quick, I actually would not be surprised if they're back in the Super Bowl in Vegas in February.
Oh, sure. The conference is terrible.
I truly would not be surprised.
Yeah.
For everything I've seen and read about this team, they're angry over how Super Bowl 57 ended in Arizona this past February. And they're motivated. But that's another episode for another day.
My man.
Eagles are coming in. Oh, in week 2, who do we got? Oh, that's right. Miami. Sunday Night Football. Another team in the AFC East who is coming in and saying, you know what? They're not giving us the respect that we deserve. Yes, there are question marks and concerns about Tua Tagovailoa, but when he's healthy, he's good. He's not, oh my God, he's a showstopper, but he's good. Let's hope for everybody's sake that he is healthy from concussion issues this season, and I mean that sincerely.
You and me
but
both.
Miami, outside of the question marks in terms of Tua's health concussion concerns, this is the one matchup I say, you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing this Pats secondary against the Barn Burners in Miami. And you know who I'm talking about. I don't need to say who. Week 3, who they got? Oh, that's right. Week 3, ooh, man. The Patriots. The Patriots in week 3, ladies and gentlemen, just to remind everybody of exactly what's ahead. Week 3, they got the New York Jets, who have now become the sexiest football MILF in America that we've ever seen in our lifetime. So they decided they were going to bring in a 50-year-old Salma Hayek, who is goddamn beautiful.
You ain't wrong.
For a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who by the way is still among the best quarterbacks in the NFL. There hasn't been a dip in his play. But now you got him with Garrett Wilson. And oh, by the way, they just signed Dalvin Cook. And that defense. You can't tell me now that week 3 matchup is not circled on your calendar somewhere, somehow. You can't convince me otherwise. Because for me, it sure as hell is. Outside of being a Patriots fan. And then, oh, by the way, week 4. Oh, that's right. America's team. Or should I say America's losers and the Dallas Cowboys.
Listen, I'm a Niners fan. History has not been friendly to them, and I've been there for it.
At all. Oh, at all. Oh, at all. I mean, I don't need to remind you of your success against that Cowboys team in the division round last January. I don't need to do any of that. But Eagles, Dolphins, Jets, and Cowboys, Murderers Row, 4 straight to start the season. It is not beyond possibility that this team could end up starting off 0-4. And a lot of people will say, well, Bill Belichick can at least coach him at least one win. If all of these teams are playing up to their full potential, 0-4. Oh, by the way, on the Cowboys, just real quick, yeah, that Cowboy defense, and especially if the Patriots can't figure out their offensive line concerns and worries and issues, good luck stopping Micah Parsons. Good luck against that Cowboys secondary, because Micah Parsons is probably the best pass rusher that the Patriots will face in those first 4 weeks. If you ask me, I really do believe that. I really do. Your thoughts?
No, listen, I'm right with you. Micah Parsons is a threat. Now, granted, I did happen to witness a game where a backup left tackle and Walker Little shut him down, and the Jags beat them in overtime. But that's just because I happen to be there. It's okay. It's nobody's fault. No, listen, I love a lot of what you broke down. 7 wins, I don't think is bad. Just because I have a lot of close ones on my on my breakdown that just don't go the Pats' way. I have 5-12 overall. I have them going 2-4 in the division. I have them with 1-3 against the AFC West, but they could sneak one in against the Broncos, for example. The Chargers might charger. I won't.
Commanders. I got them beating the Commanders.
Going to the NFC East, the Commanders is a winnable game.
Yeah.
But just by the same token, it's interesting that those two teams are built very similar in that there's a dominant defense on either side, but the quarterback has questions. I can see very much how the Commanders with Eric Bieniemy, just because he's there, might make a difference. I mean that's a chess match, right? Bieniemy,
it really is.
But I have them. It could very just as easily be a 2-2. Bam, there's your 7 wins if I'm wrong, right?
Yeah.
And then with the Steelers, Colts, and don't
forget the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Broncos later in the season.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, we talked about them with the AFC West there. I think they're going 1-3 in that division, and then the NFC East 1-3 there too. Right, exactly. But I think the game that tips it for me, for them winning 5 rather than 6 games, I think the Saints are a deceptively good team that isn't a good team. They're just better than everybody else in their sorry division.
Yeah.
Derek Carr is an acceptable quarterback. He's the best quarterback in that division. And don't look
by
now.
Far. It's not even close.
Yeah. Well, and take that and this, the Saints defense, such that it is the best that Carr has played alongside of.
100%. And it's funny, before Falcon fans or Panther fans or Bucks fans, who don't have a dog in this fight, start coming down my neck, Derek Carr is the best quarterback in the division. That's how bad the division is. It's going to be this year. Like this, we don't know what you're going to have in Bryce Young. That remains to be seen. Could he surprise us? Sure.
But I'm already putting him at 2.
Listen, there's a chance that he could very possibly go through growing pains, and I wouldn't put it past him. So Bryce Young, that is. So, but man, the Saints, I do agree with you. Like they could be sneaky okay. I wouldn't say good.
Well, again, they're good compared to that division.
Compared to that division. But if you're talking in terms of the rest of the NFC, they don't stand a chance against the likes of the Eagles or the Niners, and who I expect fully to be back in the NFC title game. The Vikings, for example, who I still think they should dominate the NFC North easily. Another year of Kirk Cousins, I believe Kevin O'Connell. So the Saints, in comparison to the powerhouse of the NFC.
Oh, listen, and you can be critical of that all you want. I don't blame you, but they're still going to host a playoff game.
Yeah, and then get smoked, and still get smoked.
Hey, that's a different question.
I'm just saying.
Buddy, listen, another banger from you here of a segment. I love it. An honor, joy, and privilege. You keep saying on my radio show, don't you have more than one? Tell these people where you're at, brother.
I do have a radio show at 91.5 WMFO. And like I'm on like so many different platforms. It's not even funny. I'm on Believe Network. I'm also like do like Bruins coverage for the hockey news as well. And
It's been impressive work, by the way.
thank you. And as well as you can also find me on Twitter at Shukri Wrights. And as well as like TikTok, same handle. You find me on Instagram on @SWrightsRadio_. Just find me on social media. Just type in my name on Google. You'll find my socials very easily.
Follow this dude anyway because it's fun. Listen, I don't bring boring people on the show, Shukri Wrights. I think that should speak for itself. Damn it.
I know. I've listened.
An honor, joy, and privilege, man. Another great show. I promise that I will have you on so you can ask what form of bud I smoke because I don't think Brady's the GOAT. And listen, I was born the same year Montana was. Call it bias if you want. I'm just throwing it out there.
It's all good. It's all good.
Shukri Wrights, man, thank you very much. We'll catch you on the next one. I got to take it over to the Bills coverage to wrap this episode up, brother.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
All right, man. What a segment, man. What segments? We're doing great tonight. And we're not even done yet, folks. I got to bring in my Bills guy, Steve Aitchison. Listen, the dude's known as the Bills car guy, but he's not a dude that works on cars. He just has a car with a lot of Bills decals on it. Whatever. We'll go over that in a little bit, but enjoy this time talking Bills with Steve Aitchison. And listen, this next guest comes in highly recommended by the madman Mark Mancini, who you see here on the regular. We didn't get him. He's been on assignment, let's say, but during the previews, but that is of no consequence now. Bring in this Steve the Bills car guy. You do cars too? I have a better luck finding a car guy than a Bills guy here in Florida, but nonetheless, I know neither of those things. Well, I would know about the Bills than the cars. Anyways, you got me off track. That's my own fault. Steve Aitchison, welcome aboard, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Kyle, for having me. I appreciate it. And just to clarify the Bills car guy, my car is a full Bills car wrapped. So that's why it's the Bills car guy. So I actually know nothing about cars. My dad was a mechanic. My father-in-law's into Alphas. But for me, I just like the Bills and I put them all over my car. So that's why I'm the Bills car guy.
I mean, theoretically, you would have some guesses about detailing, I would say, but that's a
yeah, just a little bit. But yeah, no, it's the Bills car guy. That's just something. My car is probably a lot more famous than I am. And it's just, yeah, people love it. People love the Bills here, and they love seeing the Bills rap. And that's who I've become, I guess. So,
well, hopefully we have you on here to close the gap in that fame just a little bit, my friend. But let's get into it. First of all, listen, I don't often have new Bills people on my show. Like, again, I live in Florida. I only know so many. But it was this time, I think, 2 or 3 years ago now, that Stefon Diggs came in from Minnesota on this very podcast, the Student of the Game. It was back on the Haps app when that was a thing. I said that Stefon Diggs would be the most valuable offensive asset on the Bills. Now, are you one of these common people who think it's Josh Allen because he's a quarterback, or do you agree with me?
Well, here's the thing. I do think that to each their own. I think they each make each other better. I think Diggs makes Allen better and Allen makes Diggs better. I do think that Diggs would have been successful had he stayed in Minnesota. And I think Jefferson would have been successful if he had to come to Buffalo. Obviously, that's saying the draft falls exactly the same way. Both have pretty good quarterbacks. I like to think ours is significantly better. No offense to Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. I hope they win their Super Bowl one day too, for their fans' sake. They're all loyal, but I think that, and I'm kind of on the other side. I think Allen is a talent that doesn't come around very often. There's a lot of good receivers, and there's very few great quarterbacks at the level of rushing and throwing and just ability. And I think he's up there. But I'm also, I'll move my camera a little bit. I'm a big Diggs fan too. So I got his jersey over there right next to Mr. 17, Allen. So I'm a big supporter of both of them, but I think Allen is just in his own category, in my opinion.
The dad jokes are writing themselves here. You're trying to tell me that Steve digs Stefon?
Well, I am a new dad, not really, 4 years old. So the jokes are getting worse, but yes, I dig Stefon for sure.
Steve Diggs Stefan. It's so perfect, man. Speaking of perfection, I gotta say there's been a lot of, with your receiver core, it's been good, but there's a lot of people, and I'm going to get in this in particular because I don't know. I'm based out of Orlando, Florida. I'm sure you will, if you put together that I also cover UCF with the Black and Gold Banneret. I'm going to bring up Gabe Davis. What's with all this constant disrespect about him as the number 2 receiver? And do you feel like he's going to be an issue, or do you think he's getting too much guff?
So I actually think based on last year, how the season went for him, a couple drops here and there, I'm pretty confident he was playing the probably 90% of the season hurt with an ankle injury. That's what they've been saying. And I think he showed his true potential in that 13-second, which we don't, it's like a forbidden word in this house, 13 seconds to talk about. But in that game, 4 touchdowns, like 200 yards, he showed what he can be. It is hard to shine, though, when you're on the opposite side of Diggs. But I do think that Davis could be and is looking like in training camp this year, like he's going to be that solid number 2 guy. I mean, he already has it locked down. He's number 2. But he looks like he's going to be that solid guy who's going to I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. And he's probably going to get a pretty big bag next year when his contract comes up. So he's going to be a fun player to watch this season for fantasy's sake, for, if you're like a UCF fan, just watching Davis do what he has the potential to do, he's going to be a problem for a lot of cornerbacks this year and safeties.
And for those making a quick show note here, it's not just Gabe Davis, it's Latavius Murray, and I think Rashad Perriman is in camp too as well. So UCF players abound here on the Buffalo Bills squad. Talk to Latavius Murray, cool guy in his own right. Anyways, by the way, speaking of Gabe Davis, Steve, I know I just met you here today, but I feel like I owe you an apology. He was actually on the sideline at the UCF season opener last year. I pulled him aside and gave him a little whisper. I said, I picked you guys to win the Super Bowl. So if I did, in fact, jinx your franchise, it is my apologies.
I don't think anyone jinxed us last year. The injuries were just too much for any team to bear. And that's, not an excuse. The team knows they still had their quarterback. They still had Diggs. They still had, a good portion of their defense. But a lot of stuff piled up last year, and it was a tough one. I mean, when the season was over, I think I told Mark when I was on his cast a couple weeks ago that it almost felt like a sigh at the end, like a sigh of relief at the end of the season last year. Like, thank God that season's over. That was a good, fun season, but there was so much drama and so much, going on with injuries and going on in Buffalo that it really was just like, okay, let's move on to next year. We're ready for that. So. But yeah, no, last year was they had a good enough team to win a Super Bowl. The past 3 years they've had that team. So, but we'll see.
So yeah, and
New Year's starting, we're excited.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, this is that time of year where even the Texans think they have a chance. I know, I get it. But sorry, it's a unique take I have. When you're on Jaguars Twitter and you see Texan fans talking trash, I'm like, it's a weird thing. But welcome to this time of year. That's what I'm saying.
Everyone's at square one right now, so everyone's got just the same. A couple teams have a little more excitement, but everyone's excited, so you can't blame anybody.
Yeah, well, right, exactly, because football. That's the excuse I put anything on. It's
just so great.
And I would be remiss if I didn't bring in your perspective on this. For as much as the lamestream media is sailing you guys down the river, I mean, I know last week I had people in the NFC East preview throwing in shots at the Bills. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. Before we even ask that question, because that'll come up in the schedule predictions here shortly, what do you – too much is being made of Aaron Charles Rodgers, right? Like, I'm not the problem there, right?
No, it's I think frankly it's just one of those things like, okay, it's a shiny new toy in New York and it's a shiny new toy in New Jersey. I have to point that out.
Really?
Yeah. It's a shiny new toy, and Rodgers is a great quarterback. I mean, he's a great quarterback. They're excited to have him, but he's 40, and I'm 39, so I'm not going to say, I can't do anything anymore because I'm going to be 40. But to play in that game with what I'm seeing, a not great offensive line, I don't know. He's not a very mobile quarterback, and he's going to be running for his life. And I've heard on multiple radio shows that quarterbacks, as they get older, they do not – I mean, no quarterback wants to get hit.
Right.
but as they get older, they hate it, and they will do everything they can to avoid getting hit. So I just it's going to be interesting to see what they do to protect him. But the Jets defense is, I think the Jets defense is not being talked about enough because Rodgers is there, because their defense is really good.
I mean, Robert Saleh, and listen, I say this as a guy who follows the 49ers when he's not being a reporter type, and that's Robert Saleh and Mike McDaniel and D'Amico Ryans all being former coaches that are now going to other franchises. Ryans we have yet to see, but to see that much success just in the AFC East from these former Niner entities is fascinating to me. So, credit all day with that, 100%. And you're talking about defenses. Let me go to this angle, because speaking of teams where we don't hear a lot about their defense, the Bills' defense, I've never been here to say they were bad, but the statements have been made that they aren't quite enough to, back or support Josh Allen and the offense to really get to that championship caliber place, which, like you said, the infamous 13. Like, from my perspective, I would have thought Josh Allen on Josh Allen crime would be a bigger problem. Me talking about covering the Jags and all that, but we'll get to the London game a little later. But I'm making dad jokes. We had this conversation, Steve.
Yes, no, it's totally fine. We're both dads. That's why I just kind of sit back and say, but don't do it. Just keep doing it.
See, take notes if you need to. It's fine. No, but it's particular to the Bills defense. Like, I'll put it this way: what excites you, Steve, the Bills car guy? Like, what about that defense? What excites you about it?
So, as you can see over my shoulder right here, Micah Hyde being back. That's a huge thing. I think he was an underrated loss last year. Mm-hmm. We lost him in week 2 against the Titans with a neck injury, and he was out the whole season. I could move my camera and show you the other ones, because over here is the Trey White jersey.
Oh, nice.
And even though he came back last year, I don't think he was fully confident yet because of the injury, which he also wasn't playing in that 13-second games. And he's a very good cornerback. And when he plays at his top level, having him out there would have maybe made a difference, maybe made a 13-second difference. Who knows? But missing him and not being fully potentialized with him last year with Hyde out, we lost Von Miller. There was a lot of injuries. And then in the playoffs, we lost our starting D tackle in Daquan Jones. Yeah. So a lot of big names have been out, and I think that the backfield, and the way I look at it is the middle linebacker position is a huge change for Buffalo, because we lost Tremaine Edmonds, and he was a gifted athlete. Very, Buffalo fans like to critique everybody sometimes to the worst of the worst possible way they can. But Tremaine Edmonds was one of those guys who was a good linebacker. But I do feel like if you have Poyer and Hyde healthy, and you have a good pass rush, and I think we have one of the best outside linebackers in the league with Milano right next to him, mm-hmm. And good corners, it's going to relieve a lot of pressure on the guy coming in to fill in for the middle linebacker position, because we're going to have a decent pass rush. We're going to have good big guys in the middle clogging up the middle to prevent the run game. And we have smart safeties. So the middle linebacker is not really a big loss, but getting all the guys back that we were missing last year is huge, because they're all in the right positions. I mean, there was a couple games last year where we didn't have Poyer and Hyde back there, and the Bills lost 3 regular season games by a combined 8 points. So I think that with the potential this defense has, this could be a problem for teams this year. And another underrated signing, we brought in Floyd from Los Angeles, a great edge rusher, kind of mirrors Von Miller. Maybe what do they say? A Walmart version of Von Miller, basically. But he's a great pass rusher, and seeing what he can do, and just knowing how McDermott likes to rotate his defensive line, I think the defense is going to be kind of under the radar this year, because everyone seems to only remember the playoff game against the Bengals last year. They seem to forget that the Bills had one of the top defenses all year long, and then the playoffs, they kind of just forget who they are and lose their identity. So I think McDermott's going to remind them of who they are, and it's going to be a fun season to watch. And even in the preseason game, they looked like they had some pressure dialed up and good coverage, and got a pick against Anthony Richardson. So I am beyond excited to see what that Bills defense does this year.
Well, and I would be remiss if I didn't add myself another part of the depth in the middle there on defense. I covered often when he was playing in Houston in the American Athletic Conference. I mean, it's not there anymore, but Ed Oliver is a tank too to have in that rotation in the middle. I enjoy. Listen, I'm going to tap the sign again of my Aaron Evans original painting of me, showing I like line play. That guy played against UCF on the regular, and while he was a problem to try to run past, it was an amazing thing to observe. So yeah, I definitely get what is it? It's the stuff that people don't talk about with Ray Lewis is he had both Sam Adams and Haloti Ngata in the middle. So the point you made about middle linebacker being okay because you have that D tackle depth is among the smarter I've heard on this show so far in the offseason. So credit to you, Steve.
Thanks. Yeah, no, and Ed Oliver, dude, his potential. I mean, he was a top 10 pick. Bills drafted him 10th overall. I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly.
You're right.
So he's one of those guys that, and he's in a contract year. No, he resigned. Sorry, but he's looking pretty strong, and he's got a good little burst to him too. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of a Walmart version of Aaron Donald, just with the undersized D tackle, but has that speed that can really kind of disrupt the middle. And if he plays to his potential, he could be that Walmart version of Aaron Donald. I don't think he's ever going to be Aaron Donald. I don't think anyone's ever going to match what that guy was able to do.
Oh yeah. I mean, hey, you're not Superman, so you shouldn't be in a comic book. That's not how that works. Like even Hawkeye has a comic book. Come on.
I mean, he was a monster, but I think Ed Oliver is a phenomenal D tackle, and once his potential's reached, that's just going to be another player on the Bills defense that is going to dominate. And it's really, but my fear again, we're kind of aging in our defense, with Poyer, Hyde, Miller, and some of the other guys there, are kind of getting up there. And it's amazing to think that I can't even remember now if I think we drafted Trey White in 2017, so he's already been 6 years on the team, and Allen's just turned 27. So like, you got to remember, like, as they're all getting, it's just one of those things I hate to talk about it, but the window will start to close if, we don't make that push now. And I think we have the team to do it. So
how cool was it to see DeMar Hamlin in camp?
It's one of those things I think people forget, the feeling, first of all, like the level of unity that we all had when he went down, of like teams coming together and just saying no prayers for DeMar, and you saw everybody's Twitter handles or profile pictures change to, we kind of forget how scary of a night that was, and then to see him coming back out, and he had 3 tackles in a row on Saturday, and one was on a 4th and short, and he stopped the guy from crossing the line. So everything he does, and people are all saying, okay, all right, enough with this DeMar stuff, but it's like, do you forget he died on the field,
right?
And was revived, and now he's playing football again. Like, that is a huge deal that is totally, I think, being undershadowed by oversaturation. You know what I mean? I think people are kind of like, all right, let's move on. He's back. He's whatever. But he's playing at the highest level in the NFL after he died 7 months ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just mind-boggling.
What was it? I was talking to my mom a lot about that. She was a cardiac nurse for a long time, so I was able to kind of understand exactly what happened, just all the anomalies of that situation, such that it was, first of all, for that hit to happen just that way.
Right.
I mean, like, was he this or that? Listen, a lot of things just happen to go wrong at the same time. That is what it is, period, point blank. Then to see that the protocols that were in place actually worked is an awesome thing we're not talking enough about. For all that we're talking about player safety, I'm not saying it's where we need it to be, but it worked that night. And again, just the sentiment and the fact that he came back and is playing again, man. If we're going to celebrate Alex Smith as hard as we did, we need to be talking about DeMar Hamlin, bottom line.
100%. And the one thing I think about too, I was actually thinking of calling one of our radio shows today because they were talking about DeMar and, him coming back. And I'm like, what happened to him was kind of like getting struck by lightning.
Legit.
And like he already has been struck by lightning. So the chances of him getting struck again, it's one of those freak things that you just look at and say, okay, maybe he doesn't need to be as afraid because it was such a freak thing that happened to him and such a, a low chance thing that happened. And obviously it was scary, but like, I feel like other players should be more scared that it might happen to them because it hasn't yet.
They certainly were that night. Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. I like how you put that, man, but let's let's do this. You're man. We're already 18 minutes in, dude. This should have been an hour podcast. I'm sorry.
I told you, get me talking about the Bills. It just.
Hey, listen. You know who the real winner is that you're doing it right now? America. There you go.
Oh man, welcome America. Glad to be here.
With that in mind, let's go ahead. Let's see how popular you and I stay with America as we get to the record prediction. Man, listen, I got to tell you, this schedule did you no favors as a Bills fan. I'm going to put it at that. But where would you say you guys are going to fall out at?
So I see a lot of predictions, and people always pick up. I actually have the schedule in front of me here. So what people do is they get to week 1, and they're like, okay, they'll probably beat the Jets. In Buffalo, they'll lose to the Jets in New York. They'll beat the Raiders, Commanders. They'll probably lose to the Dolphins in Miami, but beat the Dolphins at home. And then they're like, they'll lose to the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Eagles. And I'm like, okay, so what you're saying is we're going to lose to all the good teams. We're going to beat all the bad teams. And we're going to split our division with the decent teams in our division, probably beat the Patriots twice. No offense to – actually, you know what? Offense to New England. They beat us up for 20 years. So
you would be the first person on this show to want to offend Boston fans. You're okay.
Sorry. I mean, you guys tormented us for 17 years, so offense intended.
I mean, listen, you're coming on right after Shukri Wrights here, so that he gets it. He understands.
But the way I look at it is I do feel like one of the things going to happen, we're going to lose a stupid game. We're going to lose. It seems to happen every year. I think it was 2 years ago we lost to the Jaguars 6-9, and that was before they were decent.
I was there for it. You lost to Urban Meyer. It happened. Yeah, I guess
6-9, right? Yeah. We lost that stupid game, and it shouldn't have happened.
Technically, it wasn't Urban Meyer. He was already fired by then. My bad.
Well, it was a distraught Jaguars team, and they shut the Bills down. So a weird game.
Yeah.
So I do think we're going to have one of those losses. I think we are going to lose 1 or 2 of the away games to Miami or New York. I don't think we're going to lose both of them, though. I think we're actually going to own one of those 2 teams at home and away. Mm-hmm. So that's 2 losses where I'm at. And I do think we will lose to one of the NFC East teams. But my prediction is not the Eagles, not the Cowboys, not the Commanders. I think we might lose to the Giants. So that's 3 losses. And that's not to say anything. I think that might be one of those games that is like, okay, stuff's kind of teetering. Like the Bills are getting ready to kind of spike up and be good again. And the Giants kind of just take advantage of a little dip that the Bills might have. So that's 3 losses right there. And I think we might lose to the Chiefs in the regular season this year. We've beat them in the regular season the past 2 years and then lost in the playoffs. Not last year in the playoffs against the Chiefs, but 2 years ago in the playoffs against the Chiefs and 3 years ago in the playoffs against the Chiefs. So I think we might lose to the Chiefs during the regular season. So I think we're going to have 4 losses. I think we're going to be at 13-4. And I actually do think that's going to pull in the 1 seed this year. I know that sounds a little crazy, but maybe not. Because I don't think
that's not crazy. No, I'm good.
I think a lot of people are overlooking that the Bills actually have a better roster this year than they did last year.
That's a good point. But see, here's what I would counter with is you have a more difficult schedule. And that's the part where I'm at. Like where I have it, you're saying 13. I can't get quite that optimistic, but I am going to put you at 10. So, you never know in the AFC, and I'm saying this without doing my official predictions, which do not happen until September 6th, the night before league, just like we've done on the Student of the Game, not just in this permutation, but the previous one that lasted for 10 years until 2016, right? The part that's tough for me is a lot of the games I'm picking that you might lose could go away, and the point you made best is how goofy physics are in the AFC East. They are just nuts. Like, listen, man, I wrote for the Dolphins Wire in 19. It was the year before tanking for Tua. I had them going 6-10 because it wasn't 17 games yet. And the Miami Miracle happens, and I lose to my editor by a game. I say all that to say, so there was a position where Gronk missed a tackle, and that decided a game. That right there is over and above my own personal trauma, is kind of by definition the silly that is the AFC East, right? I mean, that's how nuts it gets, man. And well, And as a quick aside, too, as a 49er fan, I feel like you and I should start a support group of people who have been hurt deeply by Patrick Lavon Mahomes II. Me personally, you say 13 seconds, I say 3rd and 21. There's a 3 somewhere. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he's an easy guy to hate, but he's hard not to like too, because he's just one of those guys who's fun to watch. I'm
more angry at Richard Sherman and company for giving up 3rd and 21. Am I supposed to be mad at Patrick Lavon Mahomes II? Come on, now.
Right? Seriously, yeah.
I got you at 10 though, and I mean, for me, I'm going to have you losing to the Jags because they'll be in London already. The Jags have kind of cursed you a bit, and you're going to come in. They're going to be fresh and comfortable from playing the fraud cons the previous week. So, I mean, I might be spoiling a little bit for the August 30th episode where I do the NFC South here on the Student of the Game. Bing! But that being able to beat the fraud cons in a place that is essentially a home game for the Jags now, with as often as they play there, that works for me. I mean, listen, you're at the former Ralph Wilson. You know what home field advantage is, baby. Okay, listen.
I do, but also just to plug there,
please.
You say home field advantage. I don't know if you've seen how Bill's Mafia travels to London.
I haven't. No.
Okay.
Okay. So you're telling me if I make it to London, you know what? I'll pay attention, Steve. All right. Okay.
That's just where I'm at. They're I can't, because my wife would, as you see my room around me in my car, you'll understand why my spending limit is at its max with Bill's stuff. But yeah, no, the Bills fans travel well, and to London, it's a pretty exciting time for them to go there and go to an international game and just go to London. But I think it's going to be a pretty good split there. I know the Jags will be there twice, but you also got to imagine Jags fans. If they're going to want to go, they're not going to want to go twice. All the way to London.
If they're going to go, it's not going to be to watch the fraud con.
It's not. It's going to be to watch the Bills for sure. Yeah, because that's an exciting game.
By the way, I appreciate how accepting you are of my renaming of the alleged Atlanta team.
No comment. I
love it.
I mean, figure out your quarterback. That's all you got to do. They got some talent down there, but they got to figure out and make sure their quarterback's what he's supposed to be, and they'll be okay. But
so if you could turn the bonus 3 games from 1-2 to 2-1 with that Jags game, you're good. I'm fairly certain you're beating the Bucs. That's fine. The NFC East, I think I think it's going to be 2-2, but I think it's going to be a mix like you're talking about. You're going to beat a good team. If you let Sam Howell beat you, I might just have to harangue you on Twitter. I'll leave it at that. And then you'll blame Eric Bieniemy, as you should.
If Sam Howell beats us, I'll harangue myself on Twitter.
Copy that.
Just saying.
With that in mind, the AFC West is tough for me. I do have you beating Russell Carrington Wilson, but for some reason, I actually feel like the Chargers will get better this year because one of two things is going to happen. You're going to beat the Chargers. I'm going to be wrong, and Coach Brandon Staley will finally be fired in Los Angeles, or Kellen Moore will actually do that much to let Justin Herbert uncork and do his job. I don't know what to make of that. That could be I have you losing it, but if you said, no, Kyle, we're beating the Chargers, I'm not going to stop you either, because you know what I'm expecting? I'm expecting something right out of what is it? It's going to be Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer at the gunfight of the OK Corral kind of situation. It's going to be a shootout in Tombstone.
It's going to be, and I think that game definitely could go either way. That's one of the ones I was torn on, and the Chargers are a team that I've always kind of had a soft spot for, because I've ever since LaDainian Tomlinson played there. One of my favorite players, so always had a soft spot for the Chargers. But for me, it's a show me.
Fair.
Like, the Chargers they've had this talent. They've had Derwin James. They've had Joey Bosa. They've had Justin Herbert. They've had Mike Williams, Allen. They got these receivers. They got Parham, decent-sized tight end. They got some good talent there.
And show me. And by the way, who they drafted looks like he's going to be awesome.
Oh, for sure. And they play them in December, and Chargers, show me in December that you're what you. I mean, at least it's in Los Angeles. So, because in Buffalo, I would say that's definitely a Buffalo win.
Absolutely, the Chargers are terrible traveling to the East Coast. If that's what the difference is for me. If people were jumping through tables that Sunday at that game, while it was snowing, I put it that way because I'm sure your traveling Buffalo fans will still be doing that. Yeah. If there were ice on the ground, I would definitely make that a Bills win. But I'm right with you. So like I'm just as you could swing it to 12 and I ain't mad at you, but I got 10. Also the unpredictability of the Dolphins, such as they are. I have a 4-2 in that division. It could just as easily be a 5-1 because I think later in the year, maybe Tua isn't playing because health, So
They have the talent. I'm not going to ever deny that. They have the talent. The Jets have the talent. I don't think the Patriots are going to win a game in the AFC East this year, but that's they're still trying to figure out their quarterback. They have a good defense, but their offense is just not much right now. And
I mean, you have a lot more faith in the Jets than a lot of Jets fans I hear with that take. So there you go. But I'll say this, and this last thought. Let me ask you this question because I'm curious. Do you think the AFC East, such as they are, is the second best division in the NFL?
So when you say, are they the second best, are you saying NFC East is first best?
I'm saying the AFC North is first best, and I'm thinking
North.
two teams take a big step back in the NFC East, specifically the Giants and the Red Tails. Sorry, Commanders.
Sorry, nude name. I don't know what it's going to be. I think so. The AFC North has the Browns, the Bengals, the
Steelers,
Ravens, and Steelers.
Right.
I think the AFC East is actually better than that. I think the Bengals are good, but I do believe, and I think this year's going to. I mean, there hasn't been a snap in regular season football played yet, and it all, by week 2, we're going to have a very good idea, I think, of where we. This is a lot easier conversation after 2 weeks of regular season football. I don't say one because the first week's always weird.
Yeah,
Rodgers always screws up the first week, and
there's that too. That's a great point. I was going to mention something about Joey Burr coming off of an appendectomy last year, and everyone seems to have forgotten that. They just thought they were bad to start with,
Right. So that's why you never know what you're going to see until like week 2, maybe even week 3. But I do think that, and this is, again, me being confident because I think we have a really good team and I've seen them have a phenomenal training camp. I think the AFC East with the Jets kind of up and coming. That being said, I'm thinking more about it. So the AFC East, we've learned as Bills fans that in the trenches is one of the most important spots. Offensive line, defensive line is just so critical because offensive line, you put any quarterback back there for 3 or 4 seconds, they'll pick you apart. Mm-hmm. You give any defensive line can crush an offensive line. And I'm seeing the Jets and the Dolphins, their offensive lines are looking horrendous. I mean, that's not a slam against them. That's a fix it or your quarterback's going to get killed. Right. Like they need to fix that bad. So I would actually, I think I'll switch back. I think the AFC North, because the Ravens are doing very well, the Browns have a good offense and the Steelers are getting kind of a rebranding of themselves. And they already started that last year. I think I'd put the AFC North back up above them, but I think the Bills and the AFC East would probably be a good second, maybe even kind of even with the AFC West. But I do think the AFC West is going to be one of those things. Like last year, we thought it was going to be a dogfight, and then the Broncos were trash, and the Raiders were trash, and then the Chargers were just the Chargers, and the Chiefs just did what they did.
They were so injured too. Like, listen, I'm still convinced the Jaguars lose that first game if they weren't down as many guys. I'm not going to take the time to try to remember everything because we're already 30 minutes in. That would be another 7 for me trying to remember it all. But trust me, as a dude who's following the Jags, Doug Peterson pencil whipped an already injured team. What? Herbert had a hernia or something. I don't know. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was good for the Jags though. But anyways,
yeah.
Steve, man, wow, excellent segment. Glad and you were a hell of an anchor on the night for the AFC East pod. So I got to give you that, man. An honor, joy, and privilege to have you aboard. Tell the people where you could be found and what you're working on next, my man.
No, you can find me on Twitter at Bill's Car Guy. You see the handle and my name there. But I'm mostly just focused on Bills football. I love chatting with other teams, other fans. Getting involved as much as I can. Love to go on podcasts. Obviously, being a guest here has been an honor and a privilege. So thank you, Kyle. Anytime you need someone as a filler, please let me know. I'd be glad to do it again. But yeah, Twitter's the main place. I don't really do much else when it comes to, Instagram. It's mostly family stuff. So you really, unless you want to be sentimental, then you can find me on Instagram, same handle. So But yeah, thank you again, Kyle. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, an honor, joy, and privilege, guy. I appreciate it. And hey, listen, I like it when the Bills car guy tells me the keys in the ignition for the next guest spot. I appreciate that, brother.
Anytime.
Excellent segment by Steve Aitchison, the Bills car guy. Had a lot of fun on that show all the way around. Had a lot of fun talking AFC East tonight. Thank you to all of the above. Steve Aitchison, of course, Shukri Wrights, Eric Lopez, Antwan Staley. A lot of heavy hitters tonight. What a show. What a show. The East was friendly. The East was a beast for both the NFC and AFC. Had a lot of fun doing, of course. I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram as the same, the SOTG. Check out my Facebook page as the student of the game. Of course, my writings, such as they are. First of all, I'm doing some stuff here for the Jacksonville Jaguars preseason with the Jaguar Report of SI. A lot of fun doing that. Just dropped a piece today, as a matter of fact, about what it is Trevor Lawrence is enjoying this year that he didn't last year, that will give him the opportunity to potentially have I won't call it a breakout season, but a spectacular season that'll put him a little bit higher perhaps in the quarterback ranking argument that everybody loves to participate in. And of course, if you want to look at my standout players from the first preseason game still that I dropped on Saturday, you can do that as well on the Jaguar Report of SI. So that was also pretty great. Check out my work with the Black and Gold Banneret. Dropped a piece with them about their depth and what they're doing, what position groups are the most deep according to the coaches, and how they got there to kind of uplift themselves into the Big 12, departing from the American, and how competitive that'll help them be in their new digs in the Power 5 there. So check that out as well. Plus, coming up here sooner than later, I know that I'm supposed to turn in for submission by August 30th, my AFC South preview on the three-point conversion. So check that out as well. That too is forthcoming. Look that out for that on the threepointconversion.com. That's the number 3, not the word 3, when that drops in the first week of September there, just before the season. You'll have time to read that while you're watching college football during halftime or something. Who knows? Anyways, of course, check out my work doing podcasting here. In addition to the Student of the Game podcast, of course, I do the Duval Dive, a Jaguars podcast with my friend Travis Holmes of A7B in Sports, right along with me, by the way. Bing! A7B in Sports, where I do other work covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you'll see some stuff that we had from the Bucks there too, up on the A7BN's Facebook page. So check that out. And yes, my friend Travis Holmes with me with A7BN Sports, as well as the Big Cat Country site there for SB Nation. So check that out. And then, of course, look at the Black and Gold Banneret podcast as well. Actually, the Black and Gold Banneret's night shift podcast, of course, the blackandgoldbanneret.com is where my UCF piece is going. I'm doing a lot of stuff. Why? Because football. I don't know. If you could think of a better reason, let me know. But in the meantime, everybody, an honor and joy and privilege to have you. And until next time, class dismissed.